Alright guys, welcome back to my channel. I am Crank Addict, and in the past few episodes you have seen us drop this Jimmy body back onto our newly blasted and powder coated frame. We've got new suspension components on here. The 6-liter LQ4 is in there and the 4L80 is behind it. So now I need to start thinking about getting this front clip on, because I need to figure out a way to mount this PCM so I can finish running all my power wires. But before I can put this front clip back on there, I need to modify it so it'll work with our 2002 Silverado Radiator. So let's check it out. Okay guys, well, I'm really trying to push through some of these hardships and getting this Jimmy fired up for you guys. I know you want to hear this 6.0 engine roar to life, but I've had a few setbacks. One problem I had is I couldn't get these fuel rails routed behind the engine like I wanted to. The regulator is on the other side, and I bought some adapters from ICT Billet to attach some braided line with a -4 AN fitting. But I just didn't have the room to run it back here. So I looked up front. I realized, you know, I've got a lot more room than I thought I was going to have. Apparently the cross member on a Suburban is in a different spot than on these old Jimmys, and I was completely baseless in my estimation. So I went ahead and moved the motor mounts as far back as possible, which pushes the engine as far forward as possible. So right now these ICT Billet motor mounts, I've got them in the most rearward position to push the engine as far forward as possible, and I've actually got 3 inches of clearance now behind the right cylinder head, so that I'm pretty happy with that. So now I can finish running my braided lines for the fuel. The transmission lines are going across the passenger side frame, so that's all good. Here is the transmission cross member, and you can see I originally moved it from here all the way back here, 3.75 inches. Obviously the bolt is now here, so right there, what is that, less than half? So half of 375 is, that's probably, that's about 2 inches. I moved it forward 2 inches. Okay, so that means this back support for the transfer case here was 5 1/4 because of my inch and a half adapter. Going 2 inches forward, this will now be 3.25 inches. All right, so 1.75 back for the cross member, 3.25 back for the transfer case. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Alright, so I bought this aluminum radiator off of Amazon. This radiator is for a 2002 Silverado HD 2500, so it should work perfectly for the 6.0 because that's the truck that I got that 6-liter out of. It looks like all the fittings are pretty good. I just got to figure out a way to mount these studs in my core support. So I went online and I found out that AutoZone has the Dorman supports for this thing here. It's a Dorman 926-281. So these things will just drop right over these studs and allow me to get some cushion to this radiator. Okay, change of plans. Since the previous owner put in brand new bushings for the core support, I had a couple of leftover urethane bushings from my kit that I bought for the body, so we're going to be using these guys. Look at that. Those things just slide right over those pins. So I'm probably going to have to cut these a little bit to fit the core support, but that should work. Okay, so yeah, this won't just slide up in there. I don't know a good way to trace this out, so I'm just going to start hacking at this thing with a razor blade until it fits. This might take a while. I wanted something easier to cut through that. Okay, took about 4 cuts there, but that is lining up pretty well. I can drop those pins right through there. I went ahead and drilled my core support with a step drill to about, I don't know, 5/8 of an inch. The pins are 15 millimeters, so that's plenty big. And that'll allow those pins to drop right down in there, and they'll get locked on the metal, so they won't get pushed out when I'm taking jumps and stuff. Don't tell the wife. Now that we've got both of those bushings notched, let's see how this thing fits. I just dropped right in there. Oh, very nice. Very good indeed. So I just tied a little string around the support here, but that looks really good there. I just need to build something across here because the factory radiator support is not going to work. It might work if I cut off this C channel on this top of the radiator, but then you'll lose some strength. So I want to keep the C channel in place. So I'll just build something custom using the original, well, I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 mounts. A little offset there. And I'll just have some aluminum that will lock this thing in place. That'll be easy. Okay, yeah, so this little clamp here is busted, so let's get another clamp. And I am just going to cut off these brackets here. I'm betting the original core support goes way out here somewhere and you just bolt it to that. I'm not going to worry about that, so these little L brackets are going to be cut off. Who knows, maybe I can use them for the support, we'll see. But those guys are going bye-bye. Well, I am planning on reusing as much of the original wiring harness as I can get away with, which means putting the battery over here on the driver's side. So I bought this auxiliary battery bracket from Classic Industries, and I've bolted it to the core support. There's another bolt that goes to the fender down here, but the battery tray that they sent with it, doesn't really fit all that great. These bolt holes don't lie up to the tray, so maybe it doesn't go that way. If I flip this tray around, then I have these bolt holes out here in the middle of nowhere, totally unsupported. Also, not so good. So, what to do with this battery tray? I am probably just going to drill a few holes in it maybe cut off this flange and bolt it to the support. There's a hole here. Doesn't line up though. The hole here does not line up with the hole in the support. It's off quite a bit. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It just doesn't work. And I bought this as a set too. This tray came with the support. It's not like I bought them separately. It came together. But yeah, that's not looking so good. So I'll figure out something to do with that. Like I said, it might need a couple of bolts. Maybe some welding. But we'll get that in there. Okay. This is a tray that I built for my PCM. Let's pull this out of here. Get some of this wiring harness up. There we go. All right, so it's going to sit in there like that somehow. And again, I'll need to secure this thing with straps or something. I'm not sure quite how I'm going to do that yet, but I'll figure it out. But that's a good position for this PCM. What else? Oh, yeah! This is my next project. I bought this little fuse box on eBay, and this is a neat little setup here. Basically, you get 6 fuses and 6 relays. One of the relays is a little wonky, and it has larger terminals on it. So I guess you could possibly use this as a master relay, I don't know, but it's only rated for 40 amps, so that doesn't make sense. Whereas all the other relays, like this one, are rated for 100 amps. So 100, 100, 100, 100, 100, and then the one with the big terminals is rated for 40. What's neat about this is nothing is pre-attached. It's completely empty, bare. No wires inside. So I can use whatever gauge wires I want. I can use big old fat 10 gauge wires for the power, and I can use little 18 gauge wires for the signal. You can really customize this for your ride. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to run, let's see here, probably the main PCM off this one here, ignition coils off this one here, the injectors off this one. Down here I'll run the fuel pump. It's rated at 40, which is plenty, I guess. And then I'll run the electric fans off these two. So I'm going to show you guys how to wire this up in a separate video, because that video is going to be very how-to. So if you want to watch that, stay tuned. It's coming out soon. So let's get this thing together. Be right back. And pow! Through the miracle of television, this thing is now done. Okay, so I've got all the wires set up in here. These are going to be my ground wires that are going to be used for the PCM and the injectors and the coil. My main power wires going to my box. I've got one set of wires going to this top bank, another set of wires going to this bottom bank. And this is a 8 gauge wire, so it can handle 55 amps per wire, so plenty heavy duty. Couple of fan controls right here. And I will splice this into the PCM harness to control the fans. Over here, I've got my orange, which is going to go to my coil wire. This is my signal wire for my block here, so when I turn the ignition on, the coil is going to send 12 volts to this orange wire, which is going to activate, well, it's going to make these solenoids ready. The PCM ignition injectors will be on. The fan relays are going to require a 12 volt signal from the PCM, but I've got the grounds right here. And the fuel pump is going to require a ground from the ECM. So it also has the orange going to the fuel pump. So it'll be energized when you turn the key on, but like I said, it won't actually get triggered until the PCM tells it to. Okay, so when you turn the key on, the PCM will tell, okay, quick, 5-second pressure burst to try to make sure everything's ready to go. And of course, when you're cranking the engine, it'll keep this energized, and of course, it'll keep it energized when the engine is running. I'm gonna run all my fuses across here, which will probably be 20 to 30 gauge fuses all the way across. And I gotta figure out how to mount this in place here. I'm not sure how I want to do this yet. I might run a second fuse block over here later on for the headlights. It may be a car stereo or something. So I gotta figure out how to hook this bad boy up. Kind of fits better this way because of all those wires, but I don't have a place to secure it. So maybe I need to build a couple of brackets here and weld them to this tray so I can bolt it to that. That might actually work really well. Yeah, that might work pretty well. Then I can just run my wires around the backside to ground. So, time to build a bracket. All right, well, this battery tray is not set, but I'm gonna go ahead and put in this battery just so I can hook up some power cables. This battery is dead, so there's no chance of it short circuiting or anything. But it allows me to kind of get organized. So I'm just gonna tighten that down. So I'm planning on running a 100 amp relay right here on the fender well. So this lead from the battery will go there, and these guys will go on the other side of here. I may have to chop these down and redo the heat shrink, but we'll see how it turns out when I'm done. So that's pretty much set. Now I need to get all these wires done. And the easiest ones to start with are probably going to be the injectors. I've got 8 injector wires I need to find. And they come from 2 different harnesses, 2 different legs of the harness, so I'll have to run them together and then over into the firewall here somewhere. For the injector wires, they're 18 gauge wires, so they're pretty thin. I'm trying them into this 10 gauge barrel splice. So I'm thinking, for only 18 gauge, I might be able to splice all 8 of these into one 10 gauge wire. And that fits pretty loose in there. So I'm going to go ahead and try to splice this down low. Alright, so now we crimp 8 into 1. Okay. And these are the fuse holders, I guess you call it, for this fuse block. So I'll peel another one of these guys off. I'm going to load it into my crimper here. Let's see what dies am I using here. I am using an H7 die. So I'm going to load it into the 3mm slot here. There we go. Kind of locks it down. I'll thread this guy inside and crimp time. Beautiful. That's a really nice double barrel crimp right there. You guys see that? I'm just going to flip this over. I'm going to plug it into the number 2 slot. There we go. That's locked in now. Always got to double check those things. Right, well, there are all my wires now in place. All my fuses are hooked up. Getting pretty thick though. Yeah, if I were to do this again, the power wires seem to take up a lot of room. So yeah, I don't know if I would have used a slightly smaller diameter or not, but I'm pretty much pushing the limits on what I can do with this opening. Let's see if this thing will still fit in place. Oh man, it's going to get squished down. These guys don't have to go inside. That's part of the loop. Warm. Okay, let's see how this goes now. There we go. That's a tight fit. It helps to route your output wires on the bottom. Seems to free up a lot of room in there when you do it that way. But that's the fuse box, and it's going to mount right there like that. That's the lid. Cool. Alright, so fuse is in place. I'm going to do 20 amps for the PCM, 30 for the injectors, 30 for the coils, 30 for each fan, and then 20 for the fuel pump. So now I can put this fender back in place and hook up my ground straps and power cables. Okay, well, I'm using an existing 1/4-inch nut that's welded on the back side of this panel here for one of my bolts for my 100 amp breaker. I'll have to drill a second one, but I've got another 1/4-inch nut over here that I can probably use for a ground. And well, I thought about how these cables are going to run, and I think it might actually be better to have this breaker over here than over here, because I can run my wires kind of loosely into a loop if I do it that way. I just have to watch out for grounding out on that bottom one. That could be an issue. Maybe I can do the bottom. You know, actually, this will work. I can go up from the bottom and snag this one here, and then I'll just run these over to the top. Yeah, that'll work. There we go. Doesn't matter which way the power runs to this box. Alright guys, well, the wiring is pretty much done on this thing. I'm still waiting for some heat shrink tube to come in so I can finish a couple of connections. So I need to turn my attention to the fuel system and the exhaust. So hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again real soon.